In this video, we are going to see the dynamic ARP inspection and IP source guard properties of Commando C2000, E2000, I2000, C3000, E3000 SoldierOS based switches. So let's start. Firstly, we will understand what is dynamic ARP inspection. This is a mechanism to prevent certain types of attack that leverage the use of IP ARP messages. DAI is a security feature that validates ARP packets in the network. DAI intercepts, log and discard ARP packet with invalid IP to MAC address binding. This capability protects the network from some man-in-middle attacks. DAI determines the validity of a ARP packet based on valid IP to MAC address binding stored in a trusted database. The DHCP Snooping binding database. The database is built by DHCP Snooping if DHCP Snooping is enabled on the VLANs on the Commando switch. If ARP packet is received on the trusted interface, the switch forward the packet without any checks. On untrusted interface, the switch forward the packet only if it is valid. DAI can validate ARP packets against user configured ARP access control list for hosts with statistically configured IP addresses. The example shows, I will take an example where I will enable the dynamic ARP inspection on VLAN 1. So let's configure that. Go to configure terminal, IP ARP inspection, then IP ARP inspection VLAN 1. I can have as many VLANs from 1 to 4094. This is how to enable DAI for VLAN, particular VLANs. Show IP ARP inspection for validation. I have enabled dynamic ARP inspection for VLAN 1 in Commando switch. I can also set the interface G1 to trust. So I can go to that interface G1. IP ARP inspection trust. So this will be the trusted interface for that DAI. I can validate this by giving the command show IP ARP inspection interface G1. So this will show the state to trusted states. I can also set this G1 interface to validate source MAC, destination MAC and IP. Allow 0. You can configure all these things by giving the commands configure terminal interface G1 IP ARP inspection validate source MAC. I can also validate destination MAC also. I can also validate IP allow zeros, and I can also set the rate at which this ARP inspections takes place. So IP ARP inspection rate limit, let us say 30. So this all can be seen by the command show IP ARP inspection interface G1. So you can see I have enabled this interface with rate 30 PPS. Next is IP source guard property. It is also a security feature that restricts IP traffic on untrusted layer 2 ports by filtering traffic based on DHCP Snooping bindings. database or manually configured IP source bindings. This feature helps prevent IP spoofing attack when a source or host tries to spoof and use the IP address of another host. If IP traffic coming into the interface with a source IP address rather than the assigned via DHCP or static configuration will be filtered out on the untrusted layer 2 ports. IP source guard feature is enabled in combination with DHCP snooping feature on untrusted layer 2 interfaces. It builds and maintains an IP source binding table that is learned by DHCP snooping or manually configured IP source bindings. An entry in the IP source binding table contains the IP address and associated MAC and VLAN numbers. The IP source guard is supported on layer 2 ports only, including access and trunk ports. IP source guard prevent IP and or MAC address spoofing attacks on untrusted layer 2 interface. When IP source guard is enabled, all traffic is blocked except the DHCP packets. Once the host gets an IP address to DHCP, only the DHCP assigned source IP address is permitted. You can also configure a static binding instead of using DHCP. So what is the major difference between DAI and IP source guard? So DAI is primarily to prevent man-in-middle type of attacks, and IP source guard protects IP and MAC spoofing. Apart from that, DAI creates DHCP snooping create an IP to MAC binding. DAI intercept all ARP requests, intercept ARP validated against IP to MAC bindings, and does not switch ARP packets with invalid source addresses. In IP source guard, initially all traffic is blocked. Snoops DHCP address, create IP to MAC binding, install per port VACL to deny traffic other than the snoop sources, and it will not prevent the man-in-middle attack. This is a speciality of IP source guard. So DAI and IP source guard go hand in hand. So how to enable IP source guard in Commando switches? Configure terminal, then go to interface, let us say interface G1, and say IP source verify and IP source verify MAC and IP. So this will enable IP source guard with show IP source interface G1. It will show the status of IP source guard for that particular interface. So how we can add a static IP source binding entry? So configure terminal, IP source binding for any of the, let us say, MAC address 00:11:22:33:44:55 VLAN 1. Let us say my IP is 192.168.0.155. interface G1. So this way the static entry is created, and with the help of command show IP source binding, I can see the IP source binding for port G1. Thank you.